The prodigal son has returned. What is going on, guys? Carter here with Edge Mindset. No, this is not an unboxing. I'm just being dramatic and I wanted to slam a box down. I've actually already opened this knife. I've carried this knife and I have played with this knife in a very safe manner in a secure location, by the way. This is a pretty cool one and I've got some thoughts on it, obviously. And, so this is the Fulltrack from Hinderer knives. Now, the story behind this bad boy is it came out many, many moons ago, and then it kind of went away. It went into hibernation. It was discontinued. It's a little bit of a cult favorite in a lot of ways. Some people really don't like this design. Some people really do like this design. But since it hasn't been available in a long time, it's pretty sought after. Because there's not a lot of them around. Now, you may have seen the half track, which, despite its name, is not actually half the size. It's about 3/4 the size, but still quite a bit smaller. That one has been produced a little bit more commonly, although I don't know how long it's been since the half track has actually been made. But Hinderer brought it back. They brought back the Fulltrack, and they brought it back in this crazy Wharncliffe blade, which previously had only been featured on the half track. Now, when I first saw this knife, and they dropped their first batch of these, which was exactly like this, just Stonewash on Stonewash. I didn't like it. In fact, I really didn't like this knife at all. It, we can be honest here. We're all friends. It reminded me of like a cheap Chinese knife. Maybe something you would see in Harbor Freight or Home Depot. Obviously not with these materials, but I mean, just the design nature of it, the fact that it has a tool integrated in it just kind of made me think Home Depot multi-tool type knife. I didn't love all the geometrical angles and stuff on it. And I was like, I did really like this Wharncliffe blade, how it kind of angles up. I thought that was very, very interesting. I wanted to see what that would be like in hand and in use. And it just had that wicked aggressive look that I really, really like compared to kind of like their normal Wharncliffe. So up at the top is a normal Wharncliffe from or reverse tanto. I don't know. One of the worst things you can do as a knife channel is actually state things, because people will always get angry and fire back. Some people were like, that is not a Wharncliffe because it's got angles at the top. Okay, cool. Reverse tanto, modified sheep's foot, whatever. I think everybody knows, Wharncliffe, straight blade. You know what I'm talking about. Hinderer calls this a Wharncliffe, both of these. So take it up with him. I am just repeating what he labels things as. I know technically the description of Wharncliffe, this should be curved, not angled, but whatever. But see how it angles up instead of straight across. I thought that was very interesting and cool, but this one just really, I didn't like it. I was like, that is ugly. It looks too different from the XM series, which is what I kind of associate Hinderer with, right? Like, it was his first breakout model, the XM series, the 18 in particular, 3.5. And I just think of this when I think of Hinderer, and I just didn't really like this. So they did a big drop. I didn't buy. Yay, pat myself on the back, cool. It didn't have the money anyways. Guess I missed it. Flash forward a number of weeks later, they did another restock drop and they popped up again. And I'm like, oh man. And I snagged this one in my favorite OD green. I am an OD green fanatic. There's a bunch of colors left. The only color that I may have chosen above OD green is the black blue combo, but that one was sold out. So I kind of had my hands tied and I snagged this guy. Then a few weeks later, after that, they did another drop, but this time in Stonewash bronze. Now, yes, I would really wish I had waited for that one and got the bronze with the OD green. I've seen the example. It is absolutely fantastic. Anyway, so that's enough of the story. I caved, I bought the thing, and I actually really started to enjoy this knife. And I started to enjoy the aesthetics as well as the way it's put together. And this knife has some really kind of ironic and interesting things about it that I want to talk about. But before we do that, let's do like specs and stuff. The boring things, the boring stuff that I don't know if people care about, but they complain if I don't do it. 3 3/4 inch blade, roughly. Overall length is just under 9 inches. The moral of the story is it's right in between an XM18 3.5 and an XM24. My angle's off a little bit, so take this with a grain of salt. My camera's not completely flat, so this one's going to seem a little bit bigger than it is, but you can see here it fits right in between these two knives, which is kind of a cool spot for it to go into. Very much a full-sized blade, very much a big, hard-use mamma jamma, and that's what I would say this is. It is like a thick, beefy, dense, heavy, strong boy. And not only in looks and materials and size and weight, 6.7 ounces, very, very heavy. This is a skinny, by the way, so it's not the best comparison. But yeah, it is heavier than a skinny XM24. And the width of this knife, despite it being close to an XM24 size, it is actually the same width of the XM18, which Rick specifically mentioned that's how he wanted to do it, because it does have a wider handle. So he wanted to make sure it didn't feel like it was, too massive in your hands, which would make you uncomfortable because you're so not used to that. And I do got to say, the ergonomics on this thing is outstanding. Part of it is you just wouldn't expect it to be. So there's a little bit of a shock factor when you grab this thing, especially in the saber grip, how comfortable it is. You can see this flat hits your palm right there. Your two front fingers go into that. You wrap around. Your thumb goes right onto this amazing crowned jimping. So it's got like a chamfered spine with like really aggressive gear jimping on there. Feels really, really good. If you squeeze super hard, you might feel a little something right here, but it is really not bad at all. And this is a straight up utility survival out in the field knife, and I will talk about that a little bit more as we go along. Yes, so stay tuned. Don't give up yet, because there's some funny things about the XM series and this series that I want to point out that you might find interesting with what they've done with this particular knife. Now, it has all the usual stuff. This one's an S45 VN, which is, Rick and Hinderer really is using that steel so much, right? That's kind of their go-to steel. They do some others, but that's, more than likely if you pick up a new Hinderer, it's going to be an S45 VN. But I understand they heat treat it very, very well. And based on sharpening an XM18, it seems to be the case. Now, this is the tri-way system. As you can see right there, it came with bearings installed. Out of the box, it was pretty stiff. It has a lot of spring tension on this lock bar right here, which gives it an extremely strong lockup. It does not wiggle, move, think about moving, right? It's not even contemplating moving. Very, very strong lockup. Lock bar insert like you would see on modern Hinderers. Nice inlays here. You can see there's not really any gaps to speak of. Done very, very well. Hinderer knows how to do its machining. It does sit slightly proud. I don't know if you can see that. To give you like extra grip, this is the normal pattern that Hinderer uses, which is a convex diamond pattern. Side note, Demco uses the concave diamond pattern, whereas Demco uses this exact same milling pattern, but it's convex. So it's the diamonds stick out instead of go in. So kind of interesting. Technically, they would fit together like a puzzle. It's kind of funny. Full titanium scales here. Wharncliffe blade, like I mentioned before. You've got this fuller. On my knife, it's absolutely useless because the detent is so strong. You can see how this thing fires like a rocket. Now, I've got this running on thick washers from Skiff. So this does not have the bearings in there. And like I mentioned, out of the box, it was pretty stiff action. But once it breaks in, it runs, in my opinion, just like any Hinderers do on bearings, even with this extra lock bar tension here. One thing I want to point out that feels really, really good is how they've done this chamfering on the inside of this lock bar. It gives you really good purchase. It also sits proud of the scales, so you don't have to worry about slipping off, even though this is kind of slick, stone-washed material. Look at the size of this cutout on the lock bar. That is wild. You do have that little bit of gap there, obviously, as it goes across, but it also means that you don't have to worry about clothes bunching up on this cutout because of these inlays kind of covering that up. Obviously, you can get aftermarket inlays, put in here custom ones, or Rick makes different ones if you want to personalize it. Two standoffs here with two massive screws, and then standard pocket clip, bent titanium pocket clip, like what you would see on all the other Hinderer knives, which is cool. So it means that they're interchangeable. right? You can switch those out. Now, what's cool or interesting about this knife, and here's where we're getting into the ironic thing, is what is this? This is an integrated tool that fits into the back as a backspacer. Now, if you want, you can just remove it and store this separately. It's up to you if you like that clean look or you like this, but this actually can be used to take the entire knife apart. So it's got 2 bits integrated in it. You've got that little guy up at the top, and then you got the big guy, and then the hardware has a little hole in there so you can put it in and unscrew it. Now, the only downside is it is hard to get torque on it because it's so skinny. But if you have a pair of pliers, or you could get 2 sticks and hold it on to kind of give yourself extra torque because it is flat, or if you're just really strong and you have that blacksmith strength, or if your knife is broken in and you can just unscrew it, that works as well. Same thing with these. You can take this apart. The little nubbin goes inside these screws, so you can take these apart, as well as, oops, I'm out of frame, as well as the pocket clip. So you can take this entire knife apart, even the parts that you wouldn't think would be necessary out in the field, with a tool that fits right in the back. And you can see that spring right there. So that just hooks around there, and that spring provides tension, and it just clips right in. Now, why is that kind of funny and ironic? Because one of the big complaints about the XM series is all the hardware. This knife uses 3 different kinds of hardware. It's got a flat head for the main screw here. You need a spanner bit to go into this side to take the pivot out. This one's captured with this cool hex bolt thing that mills right in there. You need a hex key for the body screws, and then you need a Phillips for the pocket clip and this insert right here. 3 different kinds of tools, which a lot of people don't like, and a pivot that's very hard to take apart. And then Rick comes out with this banger here that not only unifies, same exact size on all the hardware, everything is hex, this is captured, but it comes with its own frickin' tool that fits right into the knife to take it apart. So I just find it a little bit funny that these 2 things not only exist in the same world, but they exist within the same company. It's kind of interesting. But I do like Rick sticking to the design, right? He very easily could have done something where he takes this, implements it here, and I know some people would have preferred that. A lot of people probably would have preferred that. But I like the XM to look like an XM. Most of the changes he's done to the XM series are not overtly huge, right? They're small tweaks to the internals, lock bar insert, that kind of thing. I appreciate that. I know some people would prefer these things make it to this knife here. Now, when I originally bought this knife, I thought I was going to take this out. Something, I don't know. I just don't like the way this looks. Something about the way there's a tool integrated with it, I don't really care for. But now I've kind of grown to like it. It actually looks pretty cool. It's kind of like a floating backspacer right here. And then you got this weird kind of tool nubbin right there. I don't have a use for it. I'm never out in the field to the point where I would need to do emergency maintenance on my knife, right? I always have access to my house with all the tools. Not to mention the fact that hex keys are not exactly difficult to get a hold of. They're very common in most toolkits, garages, other people have them, things like that. But, why not? It just floats in there, and it is very secure. If you didn't see, it's kind of difficult to pry this out. Like, you've really got to give it a little bit of, give it the beans in order to get that out of there. Now, another thing people didn't like about this knife is how big that flipper is. It is a pretty large flipper. It's bigger than the XM series. I mean, kind of, which people don't love the look of that flipper either. But it does allow you to rocket this thing open. You've got really nice jimping right there. This is so much fun to play with. The action on this is different, especially with these thick washers. It is not a drop shutty in this configuration. It is with the bearings, but it's got a very hydraulic fluid type feel to it. And that detent, the detent is money. I'm a detent guy. Some people are into drop shutty. Some people are into flickability. I like a strong, tactile, smooth detent. I like that clunk. Oh, I just love it. I love it. That's me. I'm a little bit of a rare bird. I know there's other people out there that feel the same, but I just really like that detent. You can see the blade thickness is about the same as XM18 right there. That was the skinny, so it's a little bit skinnier. So blade thickness is on point with this. Cutting performance is going to be very similar. This is not hollow ground. It is flat ground, so it's fairly thick behind the edge. But man, look how aggressive this thing is. It's really, really grown on me, the way this thing looks. I actually really like this thing. So if you're on the fence, maybe you'll be like me, and maybe your opinion on this particular knife could potentially change if you get your hands on it, or maybe not. Comment down below. What do you think of the Wharncliffe, the Wharncliffe Fulltrack from Hinderer Knives? Thanks again for watching. Really appreciate it, guys. Take care.